Everybody. Welcome to another Divorce Workshop Live. Today we have Chloe O back on, and today we're going to talk about the importance all the way from UK. And just want to let you know that if you want to get a free excerpt of Just Separated workbook, you can go on Divorce Workshop, go there. Good morning, good afternoon
Hi,
to
Karen.
you.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's getting dark here. It's already almost evening.
Yeah, well, we're just starting our day off. But before we get started on this really important topic, just wanted to give a brief introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a certified divorce coach. For those of you who don't know me, I specialize in working with expat and international families. And my job is really to guide people throughout the divorce process, make sure that they're ready for every step, emotionally, logistically, and they know what to expect so that, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming and they know what the road ahead looks like.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this topic, which is a really big topic actually, because I was 7 years post now,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea the importance of preparing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Same here.
no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. I was quite naive. I did what everybody else the decades and decades before is I just went out and got a lawyer and
Mm-hmm.
assumed it was all going to be, you know, looked after by the lawyer. And I think we've known now over all the years that, like, I've been in it now, you've been in it too, is that it takes more of it's a lot bigger than what we think. And
Yeah,
it's not our fault. We were just, that's why we're in this business, right? Is to help educate people to understand there's more than you have to prepare for than you think. So
absolutely.
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think anything important you want to prepare for. You think of preparing for a job interview or for an international move, even a local move, you spend time looking at houses, deciding who the movers are going to be. So I don't really understand why we lack that lucidity at the time of divorce, because I had the same experience as you, just went into it. But what happened is that I ended up feeling like I was on some kind of fast train just dragging me
Mm-hmm.
along, and I was trying to keep up, and I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was completely unprepared for the whole journey. And for even on an emotional level, I hadn't processed emotions before I actually started the logistical elements of the divorce, the admin. So I think all of that is really important to making sure that you are in control of your divorce and it doesn't end up dragging
Mm-hmm.
you. And that's how people find themselves in those horrible, legal battles that just never end, because they've put their finger in some kind of mechanism and
Mm-hmm.
they get dragged on.
Yeah, because we don't know any better, right?
Absolutely.
So I would example like if I got legal letters, and if I didn't like some of what they said in the legal letter, I would just fight back. Oh, don't talk to me that way, and not knowing that most of that stuff doesn't matter, but it's the bigger picture. Do you have, like, we know emotions are a huge
Yeah.
facet because divorce is so emotional. Do you have any tips or any information on the emotional stuff that we have to prepare for?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think emotionally you have to have done a degree of grieving before you're able to proceed. Because actually, when you're making these decisions and agreeing to settlements, you need to be really lucid and
Mm-hmm.
you need to be thinking about the long term and you need to understand the implications of what you're deciding. And especially when it comes to the finances, there's very few opportunities afterwards to review those arrangements. So you need to kind of get it right the first time
Mm-hmm.
round. And so if you're making decisions based on short term emotions, you're not going to make necessarily the right
Yeah.
decisions for yourself in the long term. So I think that's really important. But I think, from my perspective, the biggest emotional journey that happens through divorce is learning to stop thinking about the other person as a factor in your decision making.
Mm,
It's that kind of emotional uncoupling,
yeah.
because you are divorcing on paper and you may be living separately. So, in practice, you are uncoupled. But you see people for a long time, sometimes years after their divorce, still making decisions based on the other person,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's to spite them or because they care about their reaction or their opinion. And really, that junction in divorce that happens at an emotional level is that suddenly you're making decisions for you. And I've got a whole chapter in the book,
Mm-hmm.
which is my a new book that's just coming out this week, Don't Screw Up Your Divorce, where I talk specifically about learning to let go of the other person and to make decisions for yourself. And starting with micro steps,
Mm-hmm.
choosing clothes in the morning that you like, not based on what your ex
Mm-hmm.
would have thought of them. Things like that that can start help you to make decisions that are solely based on your own and your children's future, and not relative to the other person.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just did a presentation last week all about that, about the grief process of it all, right? But the baby steps is what I really like, because it is a baby steps, because we are in detachment distress, right?
Yeah,
So we are having to um, physiologically, biologically, emotionally detach from this person, and that's why it is a death of relationship, right? So I think that awareness too, if they can be aware that this is what's actually going on, then
yeah,
that can help, even one step to help with the healing process. I remember when I separated and I was at the grocery store, and for almost 2 decades, I would, that would be part of my job, is to get what they liked, right? And then all of a
yeah,
sudden I'm in the grocery store and I'm like, no, this isn't like, I was okay with it, but it was weird for
yeah.
a while, right? So those are those
Yeah.
little detachment things that happen. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think that's a journey, and it's usually a lot longer than the administration of the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And it can take a very long time for people to think that way. But part of the work we do is to always try and bring people back to that space,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that the decisions are being made with regards to what they care about, what they want,
Mm-hmm.
what their future goals are, not to spite or to please the other person.
Yeah, it is a process, right? Because depending
Absolutely.
how long you were married, and dealing with another thing that comes up a lot, I don't know if you have it in the book, is the failure, the feelings of failure.
Yeah, I do address that. And that's a very big one, because people don't say you failed when you change jobs, but when you
Mm-hmm.
change relationships, somehow that's seen as a failure. And you really need to shift that mindset. And part of the work I do, and certainly the message in the book, is that if you divorce in the right way, with limited conflict, without burning the previous chapter effectively,
Mm-hmm.
you have a great opportunity to reinvent your life and to start again.
Mm-hmm.
And we all deserve those opportunities. If we've made a decision that wasn't the right one, why would we be stuck with it forever? When we buy a house, we're allowed to sell it if we decide we don't like
Mm-hmm.
it. If we choose a job, we can change jobs. And it's the same mentality. And I think people need to stop seeing it as a failure, but as an experience where there's been learnings, and you're ready to move on to a new beginning.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a societal pressure, though, that
There
continues
is.
today. I know I wrote a blog about that, like the stigma that is felt when my mom got divorced in the 70s. I think it still lingers today, even though we're much better. So we have to be careful and mindful of who we're hanging around with as well, because,
That's true.
right,
And I
So there any
address
other,
that in the
sorry?
book, actually. I've
Yeah.
got a whole chapter about telling others. There's a chapter on telling your spouse and your kids, but then there's also
Mm-hmm.
the rest, and
Yeah.
your friends, your family, how to put boundaries in place to avoid their unwanted comments or
Mm-hmm.
judgment or nasty, comments about your ex, which they may think might be helpful, but really aren't to you in that moment. And really manage that pressure from the outside
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes make the experience even harder.
Yeah, definitely. It can make it harder, especially
Mhm.
when people look down on you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or just give you their 2 cents when you haven't asked for them. It can be
Yeah.
that simple. I
Yeah.
remember when I got divorced, I had a friend who said, "Oh, you're going to get back together," and she kept saying that for months, and it was so aggravating to me, because it felt so disrespectful
Mm-hmm.
of the decision I made. And it wasn't mean or ill intended, but I should have been able to put a boundary and say, "You know what? I really don't like when you say that. Please don't say that again." And I didn't do it at the time.
Yeah, that's why boundaries are so important, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not, as
Especially
you say, it's not just boundaries with your ex. It's even boundaries with family and friends. And
yeah.
as we all know, shifts happen with those friends and family, right? So
Yeah.
like that,
And they're
that's
they're biased too, right? They're involved. They usually know your ex. They usually care about you, and so they want to help, but actually sometimes it's not the help you need. And being clear about what you need from them is going to help you get through that
mhm.
experience in a better way.
Is there any other like I know you have a book coming out, but is there any other like good tips that, well, or chapters or whatever in your book that how better people can prepare?
Yeah,
So we've talked about boundaries and grieving, and any other things?
yeah. I mean, that was the whole kind of emotional piece.
Hmm.
I kind of addressed three kinds of
Okay.
preparation. There's definitely emotional preparation, which we just touched upon. Then there's the mindset piece.
Hmm.
Um, understanding how divorce actually
Hmm.
works, and that it doesn't mean that the other person is going to necessarily can take your children away, for example, or that they're going to take away all the money and that you're going to find yourself living under a bridge. All these myths that exist about divorce. This idea as well that divorce has to be a battle.
Hmm.
So I address all those myths and those fears that people have really at the start of the process to help give them a bit of a reality check around
Yeah.
how things happen in practice and help reset those expectations. So, depending on what end of the conversation they're on, they understand, for example, that they cannot take their spouse's kids away, nor can their spouse take their kids away. And
Hmm.
just having that clarity about how things work in practice, the lack of emotional justice that comes from the process, that's one that I see a lot of people struggle with.
Hmm.
They think that they're going to get their day in court, that finally somebody's going to recognize all the harm and hurt they felt. It's
No.
not part of the. And so understanding that up front, that this is not going to be the process that's going to allow you
Hmm.
to get that closure and to get that satisfaction, that's also really important. So that's the whole kind of mindset piece. And then there's the actual logistical preparation. What documents do you
Mm.
want to gather? Things that you need to start thinking about, building a budget, all those practical things. A journal, starting a journal where you document all your interactions with your ex, with dates and supporting evidence if you have some, just so that you have all that information accessible if things go pear-shaped. And even if not, just when you're
Hmm.
briefing a lawyer or whoever is going to be on your team, you've got all the dates, you've got all the facts, it's clear.
Yeah, I remember I had no idea. Like the first year of separation, I didn't, what you mean document? Like no,
Yes.
I think the lawyer may have mentioned it a bit, but was never really kind of informed, like
Yeah.
really how important it was. So that was, yeah, so these are really important topics. Um, there was another thing I want to mention too, um, is the legal stuff, right? Like we think, okay, like I said to you at the beginning, we go, okay, we need a lawyer, lawyer, lawyer.
Mhm.
Well, that's not always the case either, right?
Yeah.
So, it's, do you need a lawyer? Maybe you're better off with mediator. Like, and in
Yeah.
some states, I think in UK too, you do you not? It's more mediation first now, or it's gaining momentum that way.
Yes, mediation is definitely gaining momentum. In the UK or in England and Wales, you're able to divorce without a lawyer. So you don't technically need
Hmm.
one. Um, Part of what I explain in the book is that there is definitely value in getting that legal advice and understanding how things would happen if it went to court,
Hmm.
what you're looking at. Because when you're negotiating, you kind of need to know your best alternative and your worst alternative
Hmm.
to find an agreement. And so that I think in that sense, it's very important to have legal advice and to make sure that the agreements you're reaching are enforceable,
Hmm.
are going to be validated by the court, etc. But I think the mistake people make is that they use their lawyer as their chief negotiator. And it's comfortable to kind of sit behind someone, especially if it's a
Yeah.
conflictual relationship, and let the lawyer do things. What happens is that the bills go up very quickly, and then suddenly people realize just how much this is costing them.
Hmm.
But also, it leads to a complete breakdown in the communication between the two spouses. And if they have kids together, they're going to have to speak to each other, whether they like each other or not. And so, learning to do that throughout this process and learning to shift that relationship is really important. It's very hard to do that if you've completely stopped engaging with each other.
Hmm. And I think for me, I didn't know that I should go interview lawyers.
That's a very good point. Same here.
I
I
just
used the
went,
first person who was recommended to
yeah,
me.
I went. It wasn't a good match, but I didn't know that I had the power. I'm the CEO of my divorce, right? Not them,
Absolutely.
right?
I keep
And I
telling my
just,
clients, you're the client here. You're
yeah.
allowed to choose. You're allowed to even dictate terms. Say, I want it to happen to work this way. Do you agree? So, for example, I want us to speak weekly. The lawyer has the choice of saying no, but at least they're clear about their expectations.
Hmm.
And again, that's something I address in the book is how to select the right
Hmm.
professionals.
Hmm.
I have a whole checklist of questions to ask lawyers when you're interviewing them, but same with mediators, same with coaches and financial
Yeah.
advisors, so that you make sure that you're choosing the right person for you. They may be very qualified, but they may not be the right person for your case
Yeah.
or for you as a person.
Yeah. It's about attachment too, right? If you feel good with that lawyer or mediator or financial
Trust as
person, right?
well.
A trust,
Yeah.
right? And that, and I always say you want a family lawyer that works with you for your family as well, right?
Absolutely.
It's a really
Yeah.
important topic. I mean, point. So,
And that's where the
yeah.
philosophy also that that person espouses to is, is really important. If you're looking for a lawyer who's going to be very aggressive and, the Rottweiler type,
Mm,
it's going to be a different set of questions than if you're looking for someone who's going to help you appease things and reach
mhm.
agreements rather than, do tit for tat. So all of that comes into play in making sure that you're a good fit with the professional you're speaking to.
Do you have anything in the book that talks about preparing, if you've been preparing for a while to leave,
Yeah.
right?
Well, they have a whole chapter about how you tell your spouse. So the idea behind this book is really to speak to people who are at this very early stage of having decided to divorce, but they're just scared of making the wrong move and of
Mhm.
detonating war. And so they're in the kind of that rabbit in the headline kind of situation where they've made this decision, which is incredibly scary and overwhelming, and they just don't know where to start. And
Mhm.
so that's really the spirit behind all of the information in the book, which is structured around those big questions that come up at that time,
Mhm.
and to try and help people to prepare, including how do you tell your spouse, and recognizing that they're going to be a step behind. They may
Yeah.
not have been thinking of divorce. They may not have
Yeah.
been. They might not be at all at the same on the same page as you. And so, how do you allow them the time to also catch up a little bit before you dive into logistical conversations?
Yeah, I heard another lawyer in Florida was talking about that. He said that the ones that come see him,
Yeah.
and he's been doing this for 30 years. He said the ones that have been planning, they're all prepared,
Yeah.
and the ones that aren't, the ones that are left, they're like shocked.
Yeah.
So we even say in our book too, it's like the ones that are when you're leaving, be prepared that the one that you're left maybe need some breath to catch
Mhm.
up because they're like, even though they may have had an inkling it was coming or they may have suspected, it's still they're kind of in more of a shock state where you've been
Yeah.
preparing. For myself, Chloe, it was almost 8 years I was preparing, right? Like
There you
it's a
go.
long time of
Yeah.
it was swaying back and forth, right? But I had more time to compared to the ex.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
I'm a,
also time to grieve, right? So you were through those 8 years, you were kind of coming to terms with the fact that your relationship was ending.
yeah.
I don't know how your spouse felt, but they all different people can have different experiences in the same
Hmm.
situation.
Hmm.
And so it's really important to be careful of that and mindful of that. And in particular, when you tell your spouse that you want to separate, not to jump right away into conversations around finances and child arrangements, because for you, you're ready to go and you've been waiting for
Hmm.
this moment, but they have a lot of steps to go through before they're ready to have that conversation. And it's probably not a good idea to have that conversation when they're in the emotional state anyways.
Hmm.
So it's not going to serve anyone right to do it right away, but it is a temptation because the person who's making the announcement tends to be much much
Yeah.
readier.
I have to say though too, I grieved after too for
Hmm.
some reason. I remember studying thanatology going, I'm grieving after, and I think it goes back to what we talked about before, the failure type of thing, and that.
Hmm.
But definitely, I was grieving before, and definitely during, and I think a little bit after. But yeah, it is much bigger process than I had ever imagined.
Yeah.
It could be,
And it,
and the children. I mean, um, that's another topic about
yeah.
how do you prepare your children, right?
Exactly. And again, another topic that I address in the book, where how do you prepare your children for the journey ahead? How do you make sure that they're comfortable asking you questions, that you can keep that communication open? And I share some of the typical questions that you're likely to get from children, depending on their age group, so that you can prepare for those and
Hmm.
have some answers ready and be emotionally ready as well to answer without getting upset, and can give them reassuring answers, which is really what they need at that point.
Yeah, because for most parents, that's a major concern. I mean, the finances is a major concern. Not knowing what to do with the legal is a major concern. Your emotions are all over the place, and then you worry about like the big worry about the kids
Absolutely.
because you know for the ones that are leaving, more so maybe than the ones that are left, but they also too could have a lot of guilt feelings.
Absolutely.
Those feelings of because they're really the children are more of innocent victims in all of
Yeah.
divorce, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, guilt is a very logical feeling to have in that moment.
mhm.
Um, and it's normal to feel like you want to protect your children. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a client who said, "Oh, I don't care what it means for the kids." It's a very natural feeling. And really that's where the value of trying to do things in a more peaceful way comes through.
Mm.
You can avoid your children being caught in the middle of this conflict. You're sparing them a lot of harm and a lot of hurt.
Yeah, because I'm from a high conflict divorce from my
Mm-hmm.
parents, and they did not know what to do. There was no Chloe or Karen out there. There was no books they could buy. There was no information on the podcasts or, so there wasn't much that they knew, right? And
Yeah,
and so we've come a long way into
absolutely.
to because the better the parents do, even if there's going to be odd like issues that they can talk behind closed doors,
Mm-hmm.
the better it is for the children. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's so well researched, right? But
Yeah, I mean, it's back
um,
to in the 1980s. They were already doing research on that, and
yeah.
it's very much established. But sometimes when you're in the throw of it all,
Mhm.
forget, even if consciously know and you've been told and you are aware of that, it's still very difficult to set
Mhm.
aside your own emotions and to keep focused on what's best for the children. And that's where you and I come into play.
Mhm. Yeah, because remember, we're human, right? And everything, we're not perfect robots. So we do mess up.
Mhm.
And that's when, especially with children, we learn to repair,
Yeah,
right? We learn to say sorry, and I didn't mean to say that, or whatever their age development is. But
yeah.
the children are important. We've talked about finances, emotions, legal, financials, and is there anything else we're missing?
I'm trying to think. Uh, I don't think so. I think that there's a piece around self-care
Yes,
and
recovery.
making sure that you're
Hmm.
setting yourself up with the right support network and creating new routines that are going to give you some solace in this tumultuous, that's the
Hmm.
word I'm looking
Hmm.
for, in this tumultuous time. And so really thinking through who you can lean on. How do you get them on board? Because they may be people who are already friends and family or people in your life, but actually being able to tell them, you know what, in this period, I'm going to really need you. And this is what I would need from you.
Hmm.
And being line them up so that when you are in a period of crisis, or if you're having a really bad day, you have a person to go to and they're prepped. So
Hmm.
building that network and making sure that you have the right emotional support, whatever form it takes, so that you have somebody to lean on when you need it.
Yeah, one of my recent blogs, it's coming, I think it's already on Divorce UK, but I did talk about the 4 pillars of support, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so important to have the right professionals, as we talked about, making sure you have the right lawyer,
Yeah,
the right mediator, the right financial, but also yourself.
yeah,
You also have to, as much as I wanted someone else to be me when I was going through it, I'm the one that has to do the baby steps, right? Right. And then your friends and family, as we talked about, very important. Just make sure you pick the right friends and family, right?
yeah,
The ones that
yeah.
are empowering you and listening.
Mm-hmm.
And then the peers,
Yeah,
right? Peers are also really important. Also, make sure they're empowering peers, because sometimes I had a friend that it was post 5 years and we would still meet and she was still talking about stuff that happened 5 years ago and so it wasn't an empowering relationship for me anymore
yeah.
because I didn't want to go back there anymore, right? So those are things that you just be mindful of. The peer support, I love peer support. I just make sure that they're empowering, so be careful about your support groups. Make sure just be mindful of those type of things. But so that's one of my tips is the 4 pillars. It's really important that we have the right support team, especially if you're going through more of a high conflictful
More so.
marriage divorce, because then you really need your good support systems.
Yeah. And you need also people who are there to have fun with.
Yes,
It's not just
respite.
about talking
Mm-hmm.
about your divorce. It's having a few friends who are lined up to say, you know what, I don't want to discuss my divorce with you, but I would
Exactly.
love for us to go dancing every Saturday night, or
Yeah.
to go shopping, whatever it is that makes you happy,
Yeah.
and to have those people again on the starting blocks and ready to support you when you need them.
Yeah. Having a various types of friends is also really important
It is. Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
time. So if anyone has any questions, just put them in the comment. And otherwise, do you want to put your book up again so everyone can
Yeah, I'll
see
hold
it?
it up. Hopefully it's not showing up as a mirror. I'm seeing it backwards, but it's called Don't Screw Up Your Divorce. It's on Amazon, everywhere in the world, no matter where
Mhm.
you are. It's completely jurisdiction agnostic. So the advice that I give in it, it works for anyone, anywhere, man, woman. It's all applicable to anyone. And I've included a number of tips about international divorce because I have that
Mhm.
expertise. So I wanted to leave that in.
Mhm.
But the book applies to pretty much anybody, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, so the thing is with divorce, like I've talked about with others, is except for legal and a bit of financial, like legal changes might be different in Ontario where I am to you where you're UK, slightly differences. And I'm sure in the world there's difference legal everywhere, right? But really divorce is divorce, right? It's still emotional, it's still financial, it's still children issues, like it's still recovery, right? So
Yeah.
um, make sure you go to your right legal stuff, jurisdiction and stuff, but really in general, divorce is still divorce
It's the
and it's still tough.
same
It's
process.
the same
Absolutely.
same type of healing, same type of recovery, same type of baby steps you have to get through. So,
Yeah.
but anyways,
That's
if no one
why,
has, sorry,
yeah, so that's why the advice applies to anyone, anywhere,
yeah,
because it doesn't require that specific element because it's not a legal book. It's really a
yeah.
book about the journey of divorce.
And what I like about like your book and also our book is it's
Mhm.
affordable and everyone can use it, right?
Exactly. That's really
Everybody.
the
It's
idea.
not, yeah, and it's just to me they're just great foundational, like just foundational books where it's just like, okay, this is the reality of what it is.
Yeah.
Because don't do what I did. I went swimming without knowing how to swim, right? So,
Yeah, you
if you,
improvised. That's what, a lot of people end up doing. But if you can draw on the lessons and the mistakes of other people, and avoid making those mistakes
Mhm.
yourself, that's always a bonus. And getting those insights early on means that you're really getting into the process with your eyes wide open and you avoid those kind of issues.
Yeah, as we say, the better prepared you are, the better you're probably going to fare, right? So
Absolutely. Like anything in life.
that's true. That's true. So if no one has any questions, it was great to have you on, Chloe,
Thanks
as
for having me.
usual. And good luck with the book, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Karen.
you.